Your Honor, the Commonwealth rests.
How would you sum up the prosecution's case?
One word.
Unjust. I feel great. I'm anxious. I'm ready to put on our case, which will be more robust than it was last year. So I'm anxious for everyone to learn what we know.
What differences will you have for your case?
More witnesses, broader and deeper.
A big day for defendant Karen Reed. Her defense case begins in just 1 hour. What can we expect this time around? Plus, has the prosecution proven its case? We look back at some of the key testimony from the Commonwealth. Also this hour, terrified and trapped. Mia, one of Diddy's alleged victims, takes the stand, describing the alleged abuse from the music mogul. And Lori Daybell, the lawyer, is back at it again. Opening statements in her attempted murder trial expected to begin next week. Will representing herself again tip the scales in her case? It's all next, right here on Opening Statements. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Kelly Craft in this morning for Julie Grant. On this show, we are getting you ready for what's ahead in court. Right now, it's time for the Daily Docket.
Well, I was walking down there before that. Mr. Millies told me that the leg was actually located on the side of the cliff, or the side of the embankment, about 10 to 15 feet up. So as we were walking north on the beach, that's where I was initially looking. What I believe to be a black female, a leg from either a late teenager or, younger black female. The leg was short and had pink nail polish on the toenails.
The state's case continues this morning in the deadly first date murder trial for defendant Maxwell Anderson. He's accused in the death and disappearance of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. Court begins at 10 a.m. Eastern. Also in New York, testimony resumes in Diddy's federal sex trafficking trial. Court will start at 9 a.m. Eastern. And in Massachusetts, the defense case begins in Karen Reed's retrial. That will begin at 9 a.m. Eastern. And that's our top story. Who will the defense call as their first witness? Court TV's crime and legal correspondent Matt Johnson is outside the courthouse with the latest. Matt?
Kelly, good morning. Today will be a big shift in the courthouse here behind me as the defense is expected to start calling witnesses.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth rests.
After calling 38 witnesses over 6 weeks, the Commonwealth rested its case in chief on Thursday. The final witness, the crash reconstructionist, Dr. Judson Welcher, who told the jury he believes Officer John O'Keefe's injuries were the result of being struck by Karen Reed's SUV. Outside the courthouse, I asked the defendant if she plans to testify. Karen, what can we expect from the defense? Will you testify?
TBD.
How long will your case last?
1.5 to 2 weeks.
How are you feeling after today?
I feel very good, thank you.
Anything I told you to recall? Is that the only way you can get his testimony in at this point, if you do?
It seems that way, yes.
Any decision about Trooper Proctor, Karen?
TBD.
Cole's coming up.
Do you think the ARCA testimony will change at all?
No, will not.
How would you sum up the prosecution's case?
One word.
Unjust.
Now, after the defense puts on their case, we hear the state is also planning a rebuttal case. Kelly?
So, our question this morning, has the prosecution proven its case? The Commonwealth called 38 witnesses over the span of 6 weeks. Here's some of the key players we saw take the stand.
You're hot. Are you serious or messing with me? No, I'm serious. Feeling is mutual. Is that bad? Do you like me? Yes. From jump. When was jump? First time I saw you. I don't know. You're just my type. You think you can handle me? I just feel like you're from my neighborhood. Yeah, ditto. And I think you're hot.
Yes, around 12:31, 56 or 57 is the start of the health event, 36 steps.
How long? How many seconds does that phone move for?
20 seconds.
12:31:56 to 12:32:16?
Correct.
Okay. And is that the only time that the phone moves from the point it stops at the flagpole until the next morning?
Correct.
The only time?
Correct.
The only way he could get this kind of an injury was to fall backwards, hit the back of his head, and then the resulting, energy forces going into his brain, into his base of his skull. His injuries were very substantial, and it's more probable than not that at some point he quickly became unconscious and was unable to do functional activities.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty whether John O'Keefe's injuries on his arm, inevitably in the back of his head, are consistent with being struck by a Lexus identical to the defendant's Lexus on January 29, 2022?
Yes.
What's your opinion?
That it is. It is consistent with being struck by a Lexus and ultimately contacting a hard surface such as frozen ground.
And does that specifically pertain to January 29, 2022, around 12:30 a.m.?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
Yes, it does.
All right, here to discuss this case this morning, criminal defense attorney David Bruno. David, nice to see you. And we also have another guest joining us this morning, former prosecutor William Ihlenfeld. William, I'm going to start with you this morning. Why don't you tell us, do you think the Commonwealth has proven its case?
Good morning. I do, absolutely. I think Hank Brennan has tried a masterful case here. This is a much better case that the Commonwealth has tried than the first time. They were much more streamlined. They were very efficient. They got through this case much more quickly, which is good when you have the jurors sitting there. They've got their own lives to worry about, and they want to see that the prosecution is trying to move things along, and he did. They were able to add in some great expert testimony, some of which we just saw, whether it was Ian Whiffen, whether it was the accident reconstructionist, whether it was the neurosurgeon. There was some great expert testimony. I wasn't sure personally if they were going to be able to prove the top count in the indictment, the second-degree murder charge. But after that last witness, the accident reconstructionist who testified about Karen Reed reversing at 23 miles per hour and the percentage of the acceleration and the throttle. To me, that is the last piece that the Commonwealth needed that was missing to show that, to prove her intent in that second-degree murder count. I think they had already covered the second two counts of the indictment, counts 2 and 3, but I do think they've met their burden. Of course, the defense has something to say about that. But Kelly, if I were Karen Reed, I'd be very nervous, and I would feel a lot differently right now than I did after the Commonwealth rested its case the first time.
Okay, David, let's bring you in on this. What do you think? Has the Commonwealth proven its case? And I mean, William made a lot of excellent points there, even when we're talking about that top charge. I know there was a lot of debate over that the last trial. What do you think this time around?
Yeah, I agree with William in a sense that Hank Brennan has definitely improved the presentation in this second case. I think he needed to do two primary things, and that is, number one, explain the Google searches of Jennifer McCabe in the early morning hours, because that would be indicative of a conspiracy. And they brought in the tech expert to explain that it was a tab opened versus that particular time. And then also the injuries on O'Keefe's arm. I've always had a problem with that animal-like slashes that was seen. And that's what they tried to do last with that last witness, Dr. Welsher, and explain with that paint transfer experiment. But I do have a big problem, and I think the door's left a little open, at least on the accident reconstructionist, because they did not call Trooper Paul, who had a very inconsistent opinion versus Welsher, because Welsher did that experiment at 2 miles an hour, when it could be as high as 23 miles an hour with that rear speed. That is a problem because the experiment here is at 2, and I would think, and the primary argument was, where's the force in this analysis, doctor? And he did not take into account force. And if that vehicle is traveling at a higher speed, it would be more indicative of a throwing, or what Trooper called flying, versus that glancing blow. So I think the door is a little open here on that part, because it's very important for the prosecutor to explain the arm.
William, when we talk about the accident reconstructionist that the Commonwealth called, at first when he got into his testimony, he was going through this extensive PowerPoint presentation. I thought that it was going a little slow. Maybe it was getting lost on some of the jurors. But then at the end, he definitely summed it up with some of the comments, especially one of the last things. He's like, is it consistent? Those marks on the arm, just like David was talking about, is that consistent? And the mark, or on the bump on the back of his head, is that consistent with being struck by a Lexus like the one the defendant was driving? I mean, that's pretty clear that you can understand that if you're a juror.
Yeah, and you're right. Sometimes expert testimony can be pretty dry. It can drag on. It takes a while to build up to the final piece. But it was a very strong summary and conclusion there at the end by the expert. And it was easy to understand. For those of us who don't do accident reconstruction for a living, and that's most of us, he made it easy for just about anybody to understand. I liked the fact that he is about the same size and weight as John O'Keefe. Obviously, they had the same exact vehicle. Everything was lined up in a way that is going to persuade this jury, in my opinion. Now, there's, some people feel like they should have used crash dummies and used a little more force and a little more speed. And I think the defense will try to poke some holes in that in their case. And they're going to have their own experts. And so we've got a long way to go in this case. But I really like what the Commonwealth did. I think that was the right witness to conclude with. And I think they were able to satisfy that key part of count one, to show the reckless disregard for John O'Keefe on the part of Karen Reed. And they've got enough there to prove the case. But, we still have to hear from the defense.
Well, we do. And speaking of the defense, David, what do you think we're going to see from the defense?
Oh, these two questions that I need answered. What's going to happen with Proctor? What's going to happen with Paul? Because Brennan, he did not call those two of the biggest weak spots in the prosecution's first case. And I just wonder how this defense team is going to deal with that. They were trying to get the Trooper Paul discovery and those comments out with Welcher, trying to say that he relied on some of Paul's measurements and pictures, which they did not really get a chance to get into Paul. So I wonder if they're going to do it on their case. They do have experts lined up. We know they do. And they've been really good on their cross-examination. But can they do what they did last time is a big question. And what are they going to do with Paul and Proctor?
Let's go ahead and play something that Karen Reed said last week. She's talking about the defense strategy. Let's play that, and William, I'll get your reaction to that.
I feel great. I'm anxious. I'm ready to put on our case, which will be more robust than it was last year. So I'm anxious for everyone to learn what we know.
What differences will you have for your case?
More witnesses, broader and deeper.
The witness list is, I think, more than 90 people, close to 100 people, William. What do you think? More robust defense?
Well, just because you call a lot of witnesses doesn't make your case any stronger. I think the defense has to be careful with that. You don't want to lose the jury by calling witnesses that seem to be unnecessary, just to have a longer case, just to try to create some distance between the resting of the Commonwealth and the resting of the defense. So they need to be careful with that. Another thing, if I were a prosecutor, which I was for about 2 decades, and I had that long list of witnesses, that would make it more difficult for me to prepare, to know who I should be prepared to cross-examine. It's hard enough to get prepared to cross-examine 5 or 6 witnesses, which is what you see in a typical case. But to have a list that long kind of leaves the prosecution trying to figure out who might be called so they can prepare for those witnesses. So, I have full faith in Hank Brennan. He hasn't disappointed me yet. I think he'll be prepared for anything. But I think the keys are going to be the expert witnesses that they call, and whether or not they put Trooper Proctor on the stand. He will have to be asked open-ended questions. They can't ask him leading questions unless he's declared as a hostile witness. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what I'm most interested to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they do. Can't wait to see who they call first. All right, David and William, thank you. You're both sticking around this morning, so don't go anywhere. Coming up, we're going to get in a break, but let's hear what else is coming up this morning on opening statements.
Mr. Combs signed off on a contract to allow Cassie to do a movie, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Can you drive it home? Because yes, I did hook her up with Michael B. Jordan. I know where we're going with this.
Celebrity names being brought up in Diddy's federal sex trafficking trial. Do they really mean anything toward his criminal case? Plus, you know her, Lori Daybell, gearing up to represent herself again. How that could possibly tip the scales in her attempted murder case.
Karen Reed is in the midst of the retrial of the century.
She is factually innocent. She's guilty.
There's something wrong in this county. Come at me.
John O'Keefe was killed by that defendant, Karen Reed.
She's the victim of a corrupted investigation that was never about the truth.
Another big day here at the Dedham Courthouse.
Fight on. Nothing's breaking me, Matt.
You'll see it all unfold right here on Court TV.
The Karen Reed murder retrial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
So, Mr. Nash, you hooked her up with Michael B. Jordan, right?
Indeed.
All righty.
He fine. She fine. I mean, why not? They were broken up. He was at the Revolt Music Conference with Gina.
Okay.
And I was getting thirst to my phone because Cassie found out.
Now for what's trending in true crime. Celebrity name drops in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial. We heard a lot of names swirling around, like Michael B. Jordan and Mike Myers. But these celebrity names being brought into the courtroom might not be what it seems. Celebrity stylist Deontay Nash testified in federal court this week. He's also the former stylist to Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura. On Thursday, he testified that he introduced Cassie to actor Michael B. Jordan, trying to set them up. That happened while Nash was on a job in Miami, styling rapper Lil Kim. Also on Thursday, alleged victim named Mia testified about what she saw while attending a major celebrity's party. Since there are no cameras allowed in the courtroom, we're bringing you the testimony generated from AI.
Did you go to the party at Prince's?
Yes.
What happened when you got to the party?
We danced on this purple uplit plexiglass covering of an indoor pool and hung out with our friends, and Prince performed on a little table. We were just having fun.
Did there come a time when Mr. Combs showed up to the party?
Yes.
What did you see when Mr. Combs showed up?
I saw his bucket hat come through the entrance and made eye contact with him.
So you and Mr. Combs locked eyes?
Yes.
How did you react after that?
Oh, crap. Me and Cass just booked it.
You and Cassie started running?
Yes.
Where did you go?
We ran through the house, which was quite confusing, and we are trying. When you make it out to the yard, there was something across the street that looked like, I don't know if it was woods or not, but somewhere to hide, bushes, and we were trying to run to hide there.
What happened while you were running?
Puff caught Cass.
When you say he caught Cass, what do you mean?
He caught up to her and had her on the ground.
What happened after Mr. Combs got Cassie to the ground?
He started to attack her, but Prince's security swiftly intervened.
Mia also worked for Sean Combs as a personal assistant after she worked for actor Mike Myers. We'll hear more from Mia this morning. And still with us this hour, criminal defense attorney David Bruno and former prosecutor William Illenfeld. And joining us now is rapper and media personality Headcrack. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Happy Friday to all of you. Okay, Headcrack, let's start with you. What do these celebrity name drops mean within the entertainment industry?
I mean, they're notable names, and I think it also makes, people click on the headlines more. I mean, Michael B. Jordan is a guy who's popping, fresh off the success of Sinners. He's, I think, on the cover of either GQ or Esquire magazine this week. So it's a name that, people are going to click on. And, the media at large, I think, wants to know all of the names that may possibly come out, associated with this case, whether it be people who attended the freak-offs or even people who maybe had a brush with Diddy during all these times. So that makes it interesting.
It does make it interesting. David, what do you think? How do these celebrity name drops matter in a serious case like this one?
Well, look, for the initial reports, we had a long list of all these celebrities that you may hear, even in the instructions to the jury panels, all of the names. But as we continue to hear this testimony, it's really coming into a little clearer picture. I mean, the Kid Cudi conflicts was ones that you would read out of a book, with the potential kidnapping, with the guns, with the arson of the vehicle. That right now, and Cassie Ventura, obviously, the hotel video and her testimony about the abuse has been the headlines of the substantive evidence to date. And we're looking at another couple weeks of testimony, and I expect that we continue to hear names, and it'll be clear as to how they all play into this case.
William, let's bring you in on this. How does the celebrity name dropping make Sean Diddy Combs look in a case like this? I mean, those were his circles. That's who he ran with, all of these celebrities.
Yeah, I think as a prosecutor, you might be worried that you'll have a member of the jury who becomes starstruck and maybe gets distracted by the circles that Diddy ran in. But at the end of the day, I think you'll have some jurors who never heard of Kid Cudi or who didn't know Cassie, who she was, or that she was a singer. So you'll have a mixture on that jury, people who are familiar with these celebrities and some who are not. At the end of the day, though, and by the way, this was a great week for the government with Capricorn Clark's testimony, Deontay Nash, Mia yesterday, and again today. They have really scored a lot of points. I think at the end of the day, this jury is going to very much dislike Sean Combs, and they might be entertained by the fact that he has celebrity friends and ran in circles with famous actors and other singers and rappers. But at the end of the day, they're not going to like Sean Combs. I think they're going to convict Sean Combs, and they'll have a lot of stories to tell their friends once this is over and they're allowed to talk about it, and they can describe all the different Hollywood celebrities that they got to hear about. And this is also obviously a big case for social media influencers. They're covering it extensively because of all these names. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to impact the jury's decision.
Let's play a clip of stylist Deontay Nash about how he set up Cassie with actor Michael B. Jordan after Sean Combs was with another woman. Let's play that, and I'll talk with you guys about it on the other side.
Mr. Combs signed off on a contract to allow Cassie to do a movie, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Can you drive it home? Because, yes, I did hook her up with Michael B. Jordan. I know where we're going with this.
Let's...
No.
Hold on. Mr. Donaldson, let's get a new question.
Okay. So, Mr. Nash, you hooked her up with Michael B. Jordan, right?
Indeed.
All righty.
She fine. I mean, why not? They were broken up. He was at the Revolt Music Conference with Gina.
Okay.
And I was getting threats to my phone because Cassie found out.
Wait.
Mr. Nash, let Mr. Donaldson ask questions. You give him the answers, and then we'll take it from there.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes. So, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So, you were in Miami at the Revolt. Let's break this down, right?
Yep.
And Cassie was in South Africa with Mia, correct?
Correct.
And then it's your information that, not your information, but you observed Mr. Combs with someone else in Miami, correct?
Oh, no. You're not putting that on me. That was another stylist named Icon Tips that texted her and said, "Oh, girl, you look good coming out of the car." And she called me and told me, "Girl, is that girl Gina there?" I said, "I don't know. I ain't seen her because, Puff and Derek would keep me away when Gina was there. Never seen her or met Gina." And that's how that went.
Okay, head crack. I'm going to bring you in on this. How does a Cassie Ventura and Michael B. Jordan relationship affect someone like Sean Combs? When we were there sitting in the courtroom, we heard Cassie testifying about how Sean would become insanely jealous of her going out and dating other men. Even defense counsel would say to her, you were unfaithful to Sean Combs. What does this do, hearing your woman is dating someone else?
I mean, I think a person like him who has ego issues, clearly, right? He's clearly triggered by anybody younger, newer, fresher, impeding on his territory. And anytime he remotely, found out that Cassie was interested in anybody else, he would step in, do imposing things, do things to scare, Cassie away from these people. So it seems to also paint a pattern of behavior from the Kid Cudi thing to the Michael B. Jordan thing and others.
Okay, well, good insight, guys. We're going to get a quick break in. Everyone is sticking around for our next hour. Still ahead, we are hearing more from the alleged victim, Mia, testifying about Diddy's alleged abuse toward her. And Lori Daybell is back, representing herself for a second time. How will she do as her own lawyer this time around? She's done it before. We're coming right back.
Do you go on dates with married men? Naturally?
Argumentative.
So you spent your whole date getting to know each other, talking about me.
Don't flatter yourself. No, we did not spend the whole time talking about you. He was under the impression you were having an affair, so him moving on was a natural effect from that.
He told you that?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
I was running.
Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Kelly Craft, in for Julie Grant this morning. As we listen to the sex trafficking and racketeering trial for Sean Diddy Combs, we are now getting a clear picture of the alleged violence and humiliation Combs inflicted on his victims. Here at Court TV, we never want to forget the victims. No victim seems to stand out more than a woman that went through a lot of the things that Cassie Ventura testified on the stand, and she was also pregnant, about ready to give birth. This is Sean Combs' former girlfriend. Without her, there probably wouldn't even be a case against Sean Diddy Combs. As testimony continues, we don't want to forget Cassie and the courage it did take to come forward and talk about everything that she experienced and went through. This morning, we are bringing you a voice for the victims through Mia, a former assistant who also allegedly endured years of abuse at the hands of Sean Diddy Combs. Here is part of her emotional testimony, and we're using AI technology to bring you these moments.
At a high level, could you describe what the work environment was like when you were working for Mr. Combs?
It was chaotic. It could be toxic. It could be exciting. The highs were really high and the lows were really, really low.
What determined what the environment was like on a particular day?
Puff's mood.
How often did Mr. Combs' mood shift?
All the time.
You can take that down, Ms. Foster. Mia, was Mr. Combs ever violent toward you?
Yes.
What are some of the violent things that Mr. Combs has done to you?
He has thrown things at me. He has thrown me against the wall. He has thrown me into a pool. He has thrown an ice bucket on my head. He has slammed my arm into a door. He has also sexually assaulted me.
Did Mr. Combs sexually assault you on one occasion or more than one occasion?
More than one.
Did you ever call the police after you saw incidents of violence between Mr. Combs and Cassie?
No.
Why not?
For multiple reasons. I believe that Puff's authority was above the police. This was also a time period. This is years and years before social media, Me Too, or any sort of example where someone had stood up successfully to someone in power, such as him. Also, I was taught to believe that this fell under the confidentiality or loyalty of Puff's business.
What did that confidentiality mean to you?
That was the most important thing. And Puff had told me that I was supposed to protect him from people because there were so many people trying to blackmail him. So I came to believe that reporting anything was blackmail.
Did you ever go to the police about Mr. Combs' violence towards Cassie?
No.
Mia, besides what we have talked about so far, are there any other times you remember seeing injuries on Cassie?
Yes.
What kinds of injuries did you see?
I would see bruises on her body and fat lips, busted eyebrow, a gash on her forehead, black eyes, things like that.
Still with us to talk about this case and what we heard from the testimony. We just heard rapper and media personality Headcrack. Headcrack, thank you so much for sticking around. One of the things that Mia said when she was on the stand, Puff's authority was above the police. That's what she was kind of indicating on the stand. When we were covering this trial, we still are covering this trial, but while we were there in New York, one of the things defense counsel was saying, there was some information that came in he felt was very prejudicial to Sean Combs, talking about that incident with Kid Cudi and how maybe fingerprints somehow disappeared, indicating in a way that maybe somebody paid off the LAPD to make those fingerprints disappear. Defense counsel did not like that very much. And you hear Mia kind of talking about this. Puff's authority was above the police, she believed.
I agree with her. I mean, when you look at the tail of the tape, right, you know, a lot of times people with money, power, and influence can easily sway things in their favor. I mean, look at all these things that we've been hearing about for all these years, right, that we're just now seeing him semi-brought to justice over. And that only comes from a space to where, like, you know, you got a little bit of juice, you got a little bit of clout with people who can, you know, throw cups on you or not. And I think at some point he lost his protection, and now he's facing the fire for all these things that we've heard about over the years.
And Headcrack, one of the things Mia also talked about is the influence of social media. And she said this was a time when social media wasn't so prevalent. And that is true. It is a different ball game these days and has been for the last several years. But when we go back several years ago, when some of these incidents were taking place, it wasn't as if you could get on a podcast, or they just weren't around, or get on social media and say, this is what's going on. That just wasn't the case.
Well, it seems like, you know, very small, quiet tapping of the drum. Because even when you think about the Kid Cudi car incident, right? There were people tweeting about that as far back as 2012. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay. And then you just keep going. But then as more and more people start mentioning those types of things, you know, it gets a little bit louder and louder. I think you even saw it in the situation with, you know, the Bill Cosby case, right? We've heard about these things for a long time, but it took Hannibal Buress doing a show in Philly saying what he said one particular night to make more people on social media lean into that and look into that. And then next thing you know, it was a full-blown situation. So I definitely think he has some power and influence over some people. I definitely feel like everybody who was afraid of him for the reasons that they were afraid of him had the right to be afraid, because this man was unhinged. I think he was a person who maybe started out as a good guy, but as like more power, more influence, and most notably, drugs got involved. He changed him into the worst version of who he may have already been.
And let's talk about the confidentiality. Mia mentioned that in her testimony. She felt that that was extremely important, and that's why she didn't go and speak out, because she had signed that confidentiality agreement.
Yeah, a lot of times, you know, like when you log on to something, anything, you don't read all of the fine print, and apparently she did. And she wanted to protect herself at all costs, so I understand her being cautious. But, you know, and it's so much easier for us outsiders to be on the outside looking in and be like, oh, girl, I would have ran, or I would have, the first time that happened, I'd have been out. But you never know how you're going to react until you're really in that situation and you're close enough to the stove to see how hot that heat get.
Yeah, you really don't. And I mean, you do often hear people say, well, I would have never done this, or I would have stood up. And it's great to say that. It's great. We all want to think that's exactly what we would do in a situation like that. But we're not in it. We're not in it. We're not in it. Headcrack, thank you.
We all feel like we can survive a horror movie because we're not in the movie. You know, like it's easy to watch and be like, oh, I'd have went in the other room, you know, that kind of thing.
True, true. All right, Headcrack, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your insight as always. As we go to break, we want to keep the focus on victims like Cassie Ventura. She was one of the first alleged victims of Diddy to come forward and speak out. He, Sean Diddy Combs, is fighting the federal charges, but his defense has admitted he abused Cassie. That's what he's guilty of. That's what defense counsel has said. And also, we hope the new mother can turn the page. That's Cassie Ventura. She just gave birth earlier this week. We'll be right back.
A VPI special report.
The P. Diddy sex abuse scandal that has rocked Hollywood and the world of hip-hop.
The downfall of a music mogul.
Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years.
An all-new look at the evidence and the latest from inside the courtroom.
That was the moment when everything changed.
Vinnie Politan investigates. A Diddy special report. Wednesday night, 9/8 Central on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales in the case of Lori Daybell. It's time now for round two. Lori Daybell is back at it again, representing herself in an Arizona courtroom for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder against her niece's ex-husband. Jury selection is underway right now, and there has not been a dull moment between her and the judge in the case. You may remember the judge. He presided over her most recent Arizona trial. We were there covering it. And yesterday, Lori appeared in court sparring with him again. Take a look.
That's exactly my point. How after the fact, these aggravators, if they're found, what do they do to change the charge or change the sentence or change anything?
Probably nothing. In reality, you just said it. They don't change the charge. So you're not entitled to a probable cause hearing.
Okay, then I don't want to have an aggravation phase either.
Well, you can not.
How are you entitled to that? And I'm not entitled to a hearing on probable cause, but you're entitled to have an aggravation phase.
Okay. Well, if you don't want to attend, you don't have to attend. What else?
All right. So, how did we get here? Here's a quick refresher on her upcoming attempted murder trial.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone just shot my window.
Okay, someone shot at your vehicle?
Yeah, and it hit my window, it shattered my driver's side window.
October 2nd, 2019, Brandon Boudreau called 911 after someone shoots at him as he was pulling into his driveway in Gilbert, Arizona.
I was just pulling in. I noticed a green Jeep Wrangler, had a Texas plate. So as I was kind of pulling in, they lifted their back window.
Okay.
I saw a muzzle. They shot.
Boudreau was not hurt in the incident, but it was the beginning of an unimaginable chapter in his life, linking him to the Lori Vallow Daybell path of destruction.
It just makes you sad. You know, like a lot of people you care about aren't here anymore because of these ideas.
Brandon Boudreau was married to Lori's niece, Melanie, for 10 years. They had 4 kids and had a close relationship with Lori and Charles Vallow.
We spent holidays together. When they lived close to us, we probably see each other once a month, and then we do trips together. We went to Disneyland a lot together.
In late 2018, Brandon and Melanie's marriage fell apart, as did Charles and Lori's. This came shortly after Lori and Melanie met Chad Daybell.
Their focus is just so much on the end of the world and, you know, this idea that it's coming.
After Charles Vallow was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, Melanie moved to Idaho with Lori and her kids, Tylee and JJ.
So they shot, then what happened? It hit my window, and instead of turning in, it scared me really bad.
He believes that Alex Cox was the person who fired that shot. And he knew that Alex Cox was kind of the family hitman.
Lori Vallow Daybell is facing charges of conspiring with her deceased brother Alex Cox in the attack on Brandon Boudreau. She has pled not guilty and will be representing herself at trial. Okay, so we have a question this morning. Will Lori Daybell representing herself again tip the scales? With us for this final time this hour to discuss, criminal defense attorney David Bruno and former prosecutor William Illenfeld. All right, gentlemen, let's talk about this. So we were there for Lori's last trial. I would be going out there again, but instead I'm going to go to New York for the Sean Diddy Combs case, so heading back there. But it's always interesting and fascinating to watch a defendant represent themselves, especially someone like Lori Daybell. David, I'm going to start with you this time. What do you think? Do you think this second time around, her representing herself, that she'll kind of get the hang of it? I will say, during the last trial, toward the end, she did seem to get the hang of it.
Yeah, there's an old adage, he who or she that represents herself as a fool for a client. And we saw it in the first one. Yeah, she did well, but come on. I think both of us, me and William, probably could have done a better job on that, because that was a difficult case for prosecutors, but she didn't help herself by representing herself. And now it's round two. Again, she's following her old playbook, and that is trying to get the judge recused. And again, that was her recent motion, trying to get that judge recused on personal bias and prejudice, which did not work again. And now the only scales that will be tipped in this case is, again, the prosecutor, once they prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And Lori has her third or fourth conviction. I lost count at this point, but it's inevitable.
Yeah, there definitely are several. William, all right, what are we going to see from the prosecution? They're going to bring in probably text messages just like her last trial. Let's see, what else are they going to do? Just talk about her conspiracy and how she was working with her brother, Alex Cox. But she wasn't there. She wasn't at the scene. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is what I might call a winnable case for the defense if you have competent counsel. And to this discussion about whether or not her representing herself is going to tip the scales, I think it will. I mean, I think she's doing herself a huge disfavor by not having competent counsel leading the way. I know she has standby counsel, but and I also must say this is the most patient judge in America. I mean, he has been so patient and so kind, and he hasn't lost his cool, at least that I've seen throughout this process. And despite all of the accusations that she's making about him, but I think, you know, the prosecution, and I've been in the situation where the defendant doesn't have counsel. I've handled many cases where they walk in pro se and they don't want to have an attorney. It makes it extra challenging for the prosecutor because the prosecutors play a quasi-judicial role, so they not only have to try to win their case and meet their burden, but they also have to protect the rights of the defense, of the defendant, Ms. Daybell. So it's a tricky situation. I assume they're going to have some text messages. I don't know the full extent of the government's evidence in this case, but it's a challenging case. Alex Cox is no longer with us. It's a conspiracy. As you pointed out, there are a lot of challenges here, and I think she'd be much better off if she had competent counsel leading the way.
She absolutely would. And that the judge, he has been patient. When we were sitting there last time in the court, I thought, wow, he has a lot of patience. But you know, David, I mean, when someone does appear pro se, the judge does have a responsibility. He has to treat them with respect. He has to be understanding. But also, he wants things to move along.
Yeah, move things along, respect, and then also make sure that that conviction, if it goes up, is going to be upheld on legal grounds, like William said. I mean, the prosecutor in that situation has to be careful, too, of not creating appealable issues and making the mistake because they could possibly take advantage of a pro se litigant that doesn't understand the rules of evidence. So the prosecutor and the judge are both very cautious in a situation like this, protecting the record on appeal in the inevitable situation where there's a conviction.
Let's take a look at some of the latest exchanges that Daybell has had in court and then get your reaction on the other side.
I have to object to us having so much information go out about my personal information in that jury questionnaire. Do you not think that was a problem?
What personal information?
The state versus Lori Daybell.
It's the name of the case.
People are just going to Google it, and then we're going to have the same exact problem we had getting a jury for that case. We're going to have the same exact problem.
Are you done? Are you just going to keep?
Your Honor?
Yes.
I have to ask.
Okay, William, let's talk about that. I mean, why don't we do this? Just give me some advice. Give her some advice. Well, not that she's going to take anybody's advice, but she does watch Court TV. She's put forth a motion in which she mentions Court TV. What advice would you give her for this upcoming situation?
Hire a good lawyer.
Right.
Someone who understands the rules of evidence, because there were so many objections in the last trial, and I think the jury got frustrated with her. So she needs someone who understands the rules.
David, quick, 10 seconds. What's your advice?
Look, first time around when she was representing herself, there was a question of competency. And competency can go up, down, it changes, could be day to day. And who knows where she's at right now in her competency.
Good point. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. That's going to do it for us here on Opening Statements.